Hi, this is Andrew Torres of Opening Arguments, and I took a left at the Valley.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from outrageous BC, this is Left of the Valley. My name is Kevin, and I've come to the profound realization that if you boil a funny bone, it becomes a laughingstock.
I like that one.
You know what?
I like that.
That's
one.
humorous.
That is.
Joining me as
That
usual.
was a good one.
Joining me as usual is the team that wonders if someone from Holland marries a Filipino, is it a jalapeno?
Oh.
She thought Jesus rose because of the yeast in the bread at communion. Nancy.
Okay.
She does it once, it came back. Not gonna fall for that again. Christina.
Yep.
And she told a joke about Oedipus and Midas. It was motherfucking gold.
Oh my
Kristen.
god.
That is the
Ladies.
kind of sass I would do.
Ladies, welcome back. Hope you had a great week.
It was an interesting week. I learned a few things about some coworkers. It was a very political week, too.
It was.
Oh,
It was just one of those, it was weird, like, is there a full moon or something?
Oh,
Like,
I don't know. It's been a weird week all around altogether. Well, I'm glad
And
that
it's just starting.
I'm glad we got a full team back together now. Was kind of looking thin a bit there last week. So today we're going to be talking to the sultry, sexy voice of Seth Andrews. It's been a while, and we're going to be talking about free speech. That's going to be in the second half of the show. But first, let's do a bit of chit-chat. Did you guys hear that Alan Turing, remember Alan Turing? Mm-hmm. The World War II hero who was persecuted for being gay?
Yeah.
He will be the new face of the 50-pound note.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, he's widely known as the father of computer science. He saved millions by beating the Nazi Enigma machine. And apparently there was over 1,000 nominations for the note, including Stephen Hawking.
wow.
And
Well, that would have been interesting.
yeah, but they do, if you recall, we talked about a while back, they did make a coin with the image of Hawking not too long after his death. But now Alan Turing is going to be on the 50-pound note, so...
That's great.
You know, yeah, good for him. You know, it feels like this poor man. If you ever watch any movie that depicts his life or read anything about his biography, you know,
It was rough.
We owe this man a lot. We really, really, really do.
Yeah.
And you know, to be such a war hero and save so many lives, because it was really looking bad there in World War II without us being able to break the Enigma machine until he came along and did that. And if it wasn't for that, technically, the war could have absolutely been won by the Germans back then, by the Nazis. So he saved our way of life, only to be outed as gay, and being then after that court ordered to be chemically castrated, I believe, and you know, and poor man eventually took his own life. It's like, wow, it's not the way to treat a hero.
No.
A very, very profound injustice.
It was,
in
and
our
it's a
history.
way of acknowledging that and giving support to people today.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
who are, you know, hopefully never find themselves in that kind of situation ever again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on. On less good news, you know, when I think of pollution and you think biggest producer of waste, what country comes to mind? You think of the U.S.?
Oh,
China?
Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Canada.
that's
Canada.
exactly it. We actually got the #1 spot.
Because of our oil fields.
Yeah, this is according to the World Bank. If you, there's lots of different types of garbage. Obviously, if you think of municipal waste, the kind of garbage you take to the corner and the truck picks up during the week, that's only 5% of the waste that a country produces. A lot of it is 30 to 35% is in the building sector, construction, demolition, and that's also one of our big flaws. Not just industrial, like you said, like the tar sands and stuff like that. So if you're interested in the top 10, I should have done a top 10 for Nancy.
I thought of that, but
Number 10 was actually Serbia, and they produce, and this is of course annual waste per capita, right? And they produce 8.9 tons per capita, and their recycling is only at 0.8% of the waste. Then number 9 is Ukraine, with 10.6 tons annually per capita and 3.2% the rate of recycling. And then number 8, Luxembourg at 11.8 tons. And their recycling is much higher, though, as 28.4%.
Nice.
So
That's better.
That's kind of nice. And then Sweden comes in. I was surprised to see Sweden in there, too.
Wow, yeah.
16.2 tons per annually per capita.
Mind you,
and their
not
recycling,
everybody's perfect.
Their recycling goes a bit through the roof at 32.4%.
Damn.
And then number 6 comes Armenia at 16.3 tons. There was no figure for the recycling for some reason. And then Finland. You know, all these countries that we really love seems to be a bit big polluters, unfortunately. 16.6 tons.
It would be interesting to see what industries are polluting.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of it. I'll get to that just a bit here for us. 28.1% of recycling. Estonia, number 4, at 23.5 tons, at 24.7% the recycling rate. The U.S. comes at number 3. Our
Not
American
surprised.
cousin at 25.9 tons, 34.6% recycling, which is actually a surprising number. I was surprised by that.
Yeah.
That's good for them. That's great. Number 2, Bulgaria at 26.7 tons, and 19% of recycling. And then there's a huge jump. Canada comes in
Yep.
at number 1 at 36.1 tons.
Yikes.
Goes from 26 to 30, an extra 10 tons per capita annually. And the recycling rate is at 20.6%, less than the Americans.
Yep.
I was surprised by that too.
That makes me feel bad.
In Canada, a lot of our waste is construction materials. A lot of it is like that. It's actually 1.12 billion tons. And if you work in the construction sector, you start thinking about it, it makes total sense. There's a lot of, framing with wood, and that's all chopped up and tossed away.
Well, I do know that because I do work in that.
Exactly.
But you'd think, of course, what you think and what's realistic doesn't always, it doesn't always the same thing. But you'd think that after all of these centuries of construction, that there would be more efficient ways of saving materials or recycling.
I think there
materials.
are more efficient. It just costs more money.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a lot of people that like the old-fashioned way of building things because they see it as an endless resource.
But then there ought to be a way, and I realize misidealism here is speaking. There ought to be a way to recycle or to use the not having it waste, but being able to use it in another project or something else other than just disposing it.
This needs to become a show, actually. We need to do a show on that.
Yes,
also, another big thing for Canada, agricultural waste.
Yep.
Actually, 181 million tons of agricultural waste. And, of course, like Christina said, you can't go talk about this without talking about the oil sector, obviously.
Yeah,
it does create a lot of waste as well.
It is so
a
bad
lot
in
of waste.
Canada.
So we need to do something about this, and a lot of people say you need to talk about climate change, and they talk about carbon, and it's not just carbon. Pollution is a factor as well. And I know a lot of people have a tendency to say, well, we're so small a country as what we're producing. Well, not that much. Apparently we have a bit of an impact, especially in our waste. So think about it this way. If you start saying, oh, well, it's pointless for us to do something, we're not going to affect the end. That's like akin to a kid saying, I'm not going to clean my room till Big Brother cleans his. Right? We need to be more responsible in that. And if we're not going to be responsible towards the carbon side of things, we can at least clean up our mess.
Yeah.
With the agriculture, all the waste that we're
Well, I was surprised to learn that Canada shipped what was it, 5-6 years ago? Canada shipped waste to the Philippines and said, no, it's not waste, it's recycle.
Recycle, yeah.
And then
it's been sitting there for 6 years.
And the Philippines kept saying, what do you want us to do with it? And then they looked and it had been mislabeled. It was actually garbage. Yeah. And so now we're getting it back.
It's been garbage that's been rotten there in the Philippines for 6 years. So just imagine the smell.
Yeah, that was difficult for me to understand how in the world that happened.
We like to think of our country as a nice, squeaky clean image.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily always the good player here.
No.
And this is one of the things that we need to work on for sure.
Can you imagine, though, if Canada was able to make great strides in finding ways to solve these problems, and we could become a huge leader
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
towards producing less pollution.
Sure.
My grandfather, in his wisdom, years ago, when I was just a boy, said to me, he says, there is great money in garbage. And I thought he was crazy, and I laughed at him. And, he was certainly right. He was absolutely right. There is a lot of money and a lot of opportunity in there. Whether or not we decide to go there as a country, we seem to be more focused on energy sector right now and producing raw materials for other countries than anything else. Anyway, moving on. Last but certainly not least, did you guys hear there are 3 water parks in Ontario and Quebec that are allowing women to go topless?
Yes.
That is
Freaking
awesome.
finally.
This is Calypso Parks and Village Vacances Valcartier, which actually I've been to that. Visitors are also they're asked to wear appropriate summer wear only, no thongs or transparent bottoms.
Okay,
but
that is totally fair.
But there's no mentions of anything on no top. There's no mention of top.
That's fair.
And by law, women are allowed to go topless here in Canada, which is great. Which is another reason why you Americans should move up here to Canada.
Free the tatas.
As liberal and as open-minded as I am about most everything, really.
Hey, you're topless right now.
It would be, I'm just wondering whether or not I would go to a water park or a theme park and just bear it, to the world. That's it.
You do it here on the show. I don't see why not.
Well, I know. Well, that's just because it's just us.
It's
and it's
intimate.
We're just in
radio.
good company.
Yeah, because we're all sitting here naked. But, it's just, oh gosh, I shouldn't have said that. But to do it, out in public, I don't know. Would
I'd do it, hands down.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Well,
I hate wearing bras sometimes. They are so annoying.
I know. I mean.
but in public, you're okay?
Why not?
Kirsten?
I don't care.
I mean, if I was more
Anyone
confident in
tries to touch me, I'll punch them.
my body figure, I probably would. But for
Your body's beautiful.
thank you.
Well said.
But in the world and how mean people can be,
Yeah, I understand that.
I'd probably hold back a little bit there. But aside from that, probably if I decided, I wanted to.
And these are water slides. Do you know how annoying it is going down a water slide and having a little ball shoving into the back of your spine from where your bathing suit's tied?
Oh, okay, I get it.
It is so annoying.
Okay, well, that's only if you have one that ties in the back.
Well, yeah, if you're wearing like a full one-piece.
One-piece suit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got that suit.
Yeah, so if you could just wear no top, it'd be and your tan lines would be so much better.
Yeah.
Yes. Plus, you're not going to lose your top
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
it's not there.
There is
I'd do it.
There is an older woman in Maple Ridge. She's become a bit of a local celebrity because she does that. She takes walks and she goes in the sun and she usually has a walking stick and she's topless. And it has created some controversy, especially with the older generation, I guess.
Yeah, well, they're just...
But I totally understand. I mean, if I can bear it all, be completely topless and all my chest hairs and stuff like that, why wouldn't
especially
women
when you
be allowed
realize
to?
that some men legitimately have bigger breasts than some
Why
women.
are you looking at me when you say that?
Because you have large pectorals.
Well, yeah, but okay. Are you saying I should wear a bra?
Yes.
For men, it's called a bro.
A man.
Yeah.
What was that on Seinfeld? A man bra? What's that?
I don't know. I didn't watch Seinfeld, so I'll have to take your word for it.
Wasn't there
I've
some
never
couple-
seen Seinfeld either.
Oh, okay.
But I think also on this note, going back to when you were asking me if I would do it, I think when it becomes a little bit more normalized, when it becomes more common in that, it's not as much of a like... factor.
It's not the body image at this point that scares you. It's more the reaction of people jeering at you, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah,
which is funny because I've never actually had to go through that, but you see it and you're just like, it's more of a preventative, like, I don't want to have to experience that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because for me, thinking of doing it, the thing that I, as a woman, would be most worried about is actually being attacked by a man.
See, I just kicked their fucking ass.
Yeah.
But
it's really sad that it's like...
saying with Christina,
it's really sad that...
Just in case.
That the fact of having no shirt on for some men is an invitation to assault you. It's
we're not gonna open that can of worms now. We know that.
That's a whole other show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I wonder how many parents are going to complain because their kids are going, "Mommy, what's that?"
Yeah,
Why
well,
is
then
that,
they can
lady?
leave.
You know, what's that? And now the parents have to explain to their children, and it's going to take a while for it to normalize.
Yeah.
I think it'll be really interesting once parents realize it's like, oh, it's not as big of a deal for the kids
especially when you
as
realize
you
some
think it is.
kids, if you have a child, they don't like wearing tops either.
No,
I know so many like kids who haven't hit puberty yet who are just like, why would I wear a shirt?
Yeah.
I was partial to taking the socks off.
You see that especially in very young kids, like toddlers and 3, 4, 5, and little girls,
It's
they're
us
completely
adults
topless
who make
because,
it
of course,
weird.
they haven't,
It is.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is, right? And you could tell by the parent. Some parents, they don't care to just let the little girl play. Others like, oh my god, what are you doing? Put on a camisole or something like that, right? It's like I think you're setting up your kid to be, have a negative image of her own body already.
Something to be shameful. But like, no.
But let's not get into this right now.
But it's a good conversation.
It's a good conversation to have. So, another good reason to be a Canadian, I guess. And of course, this followed a human rights complaint in 2017 in Cornwall, Ontario, for now allowing topless at municipal pools, although it's been legal in the country for over 2 decades. So, there we go. Perfect. All right. So, moving on. Let's see. My dear Nancy, you got a top 10 for us?
Yeah, and funny enough...
A real good top 10.
Oh, yeah. Funny enough, this parallels in kind of a strange way what we've been talking about.
The top 10 topless women?
No, but this is it's sort of in the same kind of conversation. This is 10 things we buy because advertisers convinced us to do so. So it has to do with, are we buying things because we need them or because social pressure says we have to buy these things in order to fit in to the crowd? So
I can tell you what's not going to be on there: the squatty potty, because that thing is necessary.
I mean that.
I'm surprised we don't have one yet.
Okay, so the question is, as we go through this, is this something that would be necessary and you'd buy it anyway? Or did the advertiser convince you that you needed to? And they go through 10 to 1. And so the number 10 that are the thing that we feel as though we're, I don't want to use the word coerced, but we'll get into it. Antiperspirant. Do we buy antiperspirant because we think we need it and we don't need it?
So that's deodorant?
No, it's not.
It's like,
It is
not
different.
deodorant. It is different.
Don't know what this is.
It actually the antiperspirant stops the sweating and the deodorant stops the odor.
Yeah.
But the first antiperspirant...
Wait, it stops the sweating?
Yes.
That's so unhealthy.
They're
Exactly.
actually different.
Oh, that's so unhealthy.
But I think when they're talking about antiperspirant in terms of advertising, they're also talking about deodorant. The interesting thing is that a lady named Edna Murphy started a company called Odorono because her that was an antiperspirant because her father, who was a doctor, invented a product that would keep his hands from slipping as on the instruments when he was. So that's how antiperspirant. And so she decided that not only would it help her father, but it'd stop your sweating under your armpits. So the antiperspirant was mostly for stopping the sweat, but because there wasn't anything really at that time that said it was bad to smell, because everybody did, but with the invention, it became a bad thing to smell.
Yeah, and fashion was also a big player in that, right? A lot of people wear antiperspirant to make sure you don't get like
The
sweat
yellow
stains
arm.
on your clothing and
The
stuff
yellow
like that,
armpit.
right? Exactly,
So this
right?
is like 1912. So the question is, is this something that we are now convinced due to advertising that we need as part of our daily hygiene routine?
I think so.
Or not?
Well, I've never really even heard of antiperspirant before, so I'm going to say no.
Okay.
For me?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we all sort of take it for granted that that's what we need to do to keep offending,
But
keep from
deodorant,
offending.
No, right here.
Deodorant, I think, is necessary.
No. Right here at Left of the Valley, we like to keep offending people.
We keep offending. Okay.
I mean, I know I personally sometimes, like, I do a lot of heavy lifting in a day, so I'm gonna sweat, and I don't necessarily want to be like smelling bad because I work in a retail store as well, and like this just you don't want to be smelling bad necessarily.
See, for me going to work, I never wear deodorant because I'm working at a dairy
you're gonna
farm.
smell like shit anyway.
Literally. Exactly. So I'm like, why would I wear deodorant? But if I'm going like shopping or something, I sweat a lot, so I wear deodorant.
What if you put like a gigantic deodorant tube of deodorant and just have the cows go underneath it?
Yeah.
Just put deodorant on the cows.
Yeah, but it's interesting to me to really think about, because you don't really think about how much are we influenced by advertising. So number 9 is diamond rings.
Oh, yeah.
Oh God, no.
Yes.
That's-
100%. We are convinced we need.
Actually, it's well known.
Yeah.
It's well documented that the whole diamond industry invented the 3 months wages for a diamond. And
So stupid.
it was just arbitrary.
Loadable.
Yeah.
That's why we did not go with diamonds.
Yep.
And they're really, in terms of precious stones, they're probably the worst. And now they get into blood diamonds and all of this kind of stuff, but the cultural, repercussions.
Diamond should have an industrial use most of all because it's the hardest mineral on the planet. But besides that, very little value to it anyway.
And if you'd rather something that's not quite the price point of a diamond, go for a white sapphire.
Or whatever.
Or whatever you want. I went for a blue sapphire.
I
It's
got an opal.
gorgeous.
Okay, number
emeralds.
8, shaving razors for women.
A load
Yes.
of bullshit.
Yeah.
100%.
And
Stupid.
the advertising really doesn't talk about razors, they talk about smooth. Because they think women, would feel as though the masculine razor would be too much, so they advertise it as being smooth and feminine.
See,
and that's how they get to.
I just think women having to shave at all is stupid.
No, but
It's time-consuming.
There was I think women during the 60s or 70s, a lot of women decided they'd just go all natural, but there's still it's still a small percentage of women. Most women, I think, are going to go ahead and shave. Although
Yeah.
but
the thing is, I think a large portion of that is because our society says that's what you have to do to be beautiful. And women are conditioned that if you have hair on your legs or anywhere, you're gross and you're not feminine.
Yeah.
So that is a large reason why a lot of women feel they have to shave.
But that's a lot of it is in Canada and the U.S. Because women in European and other countries, that's just part of who they are, and nobody cares.
Yeah, totally.
So it just depends. So that's how advertising. That's I think one way that you can say yes, advertising.
Yeah.
Definitely. Has changed.
If I want to shave my legs, that's up to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of controversy now about the new Gillette razor
commercials,
Yeah.
but I kind of like them. I like, let's show everybody.
What I find funny is, how many blades are they going to put on these razors? It used to be like 1, then 2 for the longest time. Now it was like 5, 6, 7 blades. Like, how many blades do you need? What kind of hair do you have there?
Exactly. So number 8, moving on, bottled water.
Oh, that's a waste.
That I think is totally,
especially in this country.
I actually personally drink bottled water, but I have a reason I do. Because I am chronically dehydrated, and I get specific flavored water because I actually really don't like the flavor of just plain water. So I get like fruit flavored water, and it actually helps me actually stay hydrated.
It's delicious.
So for me, that's why I do bottled water.
I'm kind of curious because I've got
not practically speaking, but a question is, if you had a bottle, would you be able to just use tap water and flavor it, or would?
But I don't like tap water.
Okay.
See, well, yeah, because it depends where, right? Like,
Yeah,
it does.
I think what I'm saying is, could you refill it with water and use the same bottle instead of buying it?
If, say, I was living where I grew up, where it was in the country and we
The
had
best water
absolutely
ever.
amazing water, then 100%.
As we
but I'm in
saw-
the city, and I don't like the city water.
As we saw in our Canadian show, Canada has better standards for tap water than most bottled water companies. to begin with. I'd be kind of curious because the water I have here in my old cooler is actually super, super, super filtered to the point that it eliminates all taste of anything tap water wise. So I'd be kind of curious to have your opinion on it.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a sip.
The point is that you can get water, filtered water, and you can from a lot of different sources, and you can have 1 or 2 plastic bottles that you can carry it around in. I think the point is, could you do that, or are you going to go out and buy the 24 plastic bottles and use them and then dispose of them, and it creates a problem in the the ecology of things. So is it the advertising that's causing you to buy the bottles, not the water? Well, that's an interesting debate there.
Yeah. Our reasoning for buying the bottles was just...
We're lazy.
A lot of it, yeah.
In order to try to encourage us to actually drink more. And it's actually...
It's not that I'm lazy. I'm just super, super depressed a lot of the time.
And
so encourage me to get off the couch some days is hard.
It's actually funny because since haven't bought that in a little while, I've actually been like, I need water. I'm going to go get water. And I just add some ice cubes and make it really cold, and then we're good.
Okay, so number 6, since we're on the edibles, cereals. Up until about the early 1900s, people ate everything but cereal for breakfast. And there's a lot of countries where they don't eat cereals. They eat salads and other, fresh fruits and vegetables. But, eggs or whatever. And then when cereal was not discovered but made, and mostly because of the health people like, Graham and other people like that. In the Industrial Revolution, people needed something quick and easy to eat in the morning, and so it was a healthier food. And the Adventist Church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, invented cornflakes and said it was better for your digestion and other problems.
It was supposed to. Wasn't this also supposed to inhibit sexual tensions? And I mean, like stop you from.
Wow.
Yeah, those are the seventh. It stop you from masturbating.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly, yeah.
I knew there was a reason I didn't like flaked cereals.
Yeah. So then cereal manufacturers added vitamins and started promoting them as a perfect breakfast. And then the more they advertised, the more cereals caught on.
I actually would totally agree that cereals as like a breakfast staple are purely because of advertising.
Yeah, I think it's a North American thing, really.
Yeah, because cereal for me is a really good quick meal that's easy, and I eat it any time
let's face it, most cereals today are pretty horrible to begin with.
Yeah, but look at the advertising for cereals, and look at the cereal aisle. It's like a wonderland of
anybody
sugar.
who's a parent knows what happens when you go in the cereal aisle. The kids lose their mind.
It's like a wonderland. So number 5, believe it or not, popcorn.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
I always thought popcorn was a bit of a waste. I mean, it's nothing but air, really.
I mean, where I work, we have a popcorn machine, so I have free popcorn all day long.
Yeah.
It's way worse when you go into the movie theater, you're paying $5 for a bite of
anything
air.
in the movie theater is overpriced.
The interesting thing is that we associate popcorn with theaters, but in the 1800s it was sold everywhere except the theaters. And then when people started to go to the movies, they thought that popcorn was targeting the theaters didn't want popcorn in the theaters because they thought it would ruin their carpets. But then things started to change when poor people began to go to the cinemas and they wanted the popcorn, so there was a little to and fro, and in 1927, popcorn and theaters became firmly entwined because people were bringing their own bags.
They're getting really fancy now. I mean, when I was a kid, popcorn was always, the classic popcorn and a bit of butter, and that's it. Now, when you go into these places, now they have, like, caramel chocolate popcorn and Parmesan garlic popcorn.
I do like the white cheddar popcorn. It is very good.
Yeah, and when you go to the movies, they always have this time to go for popcorn, and everybody gets up, in mass and gets their popcorn. So advertising, I think, has really helped the popcorn industry. Okay, number 4. This is interesting. Toothpaste. Do you think that the advertising has driven you?
Yes.
Or do you think it's just good to brush your teeth and you'd buy it without advertising?
It's not whether or not it's good to brush your teeth. It's the quantity of toothpaste you put on your toothbrush.
Oh.
Because if you actually, if from dentists, what dentists have told me, if you look at the nail on your pinky finger there, that's about the quantity of toothpaste you actually need. But if you look at a commercial, they put that big slob that covers the whole length of the brush that curls on both ways. Yeah, it's totally designed to do just that.
And you only need like a pea size.
Exactly.
Well, the interesting thing to me about the advertising here is that people's teeth are not normally really white. Dentine is sort of a yellow, and everybody gets this little film on their teeth. And so the advertising people, actually it was the Pepsodent people, realized that they could devise a campaign to help them sell more toothpaste to make your teeth white. Not to necessarily remove all that film, but it's the white, the smile. And so you do it for health, but the advertising, I think that we're all...
Well, you think you do it for health, but...
Well, the question, are we more subject to the white smile than we are to the actual health?
What I'm wondering, and I've always wanted to ask, like, the dentistry and industry and all that stuff, is, what exactly is the process that they use to make your teeth whiter? Like, they have also these gimmicks where it's almost something you put on your teeth there. It's not necessarily toothpaste.
The white strips.
Yeah, the white strips and stuff like that. What exactly is the process here? Are they basically stripping off a layer off the top of your teeth to reveal what's whiter underneath? If it is, aren't you just weakening your teeth by doing that? I have a lot of questions about stuff like that, because you see that on the commercial, and they'll have these models with a nice white smile, but you kind of raise an eyebrow and say, what exactly is happening here?
Well, I'm going to answer your question, because number 4 is teeth whitening.
There we go.
Believe it or not, we moved from the nice minty, feeling fresh, to teeth whitening, which has to do with hydrogen peroxide. It's a liquid agent that passes through the enamel into the dentine, and it breaks apart the compounds that makes the dentine yellow. And that's what people are using. But there are concerns that hydrogen peroxide could damage the enamel and cause other permanent or temporary dental problems. So most people are willing to take that risk.
I don't think most people are aware that risk is there.
Yeah, I don't think they know.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's the thing, right?
I mean, they don't exactly market it.
No, exactly. If they said, warning, this might weaken your teeth, I think they'd see a drop, a substantial drop.
As a politician, I misspoke. Yeah, I don't think they realize there is a risk. And I don't know whether there's anything in terms of scientific studies at this point that show people who have used teeth whitening products for a long period of time have suffered, the breakdown of the enamel.
That's a good question.
Okay, number 2, almost every holiday out there is subject to advertising to get us to buy a card, a gift. So do you feel compelled because of the advertising?
Hold on, are you telling me that Valentine's Day, Easter, and Christmas are only geared towards shopping? Get out.
Yep.
I hate to break that bubble.
Oh, God.
And Mother's Day.
So disillusioned.
Mother's
Halloween.
Day. I mean, they've really made people feel so guilty.
Halloween's the best
It is.
holiday.
It is.
Yes, at least Halloween's fun.
It truly is. But also, you aren't obliged to go see family.
Is that why you love it so much?
Yes.
Okay, so here's one that
And
to
it
me,
makes Christians' butt hurt.
This is going to be interesting. See what you think about this. The number 1 product that list first, where I got this from, says is the worst in terms of how we are falling for advertising is toilet paper.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that. Because, humans have been doing their thing forever and ever, and they used to use whatever was handy, and then toilet paper got invented, and so now everybody, runs out and buys toilet paper because they think that's the only thing. But it's convenient and it works. Yeah. So are we subject to advertising because of it? Or?
Maybe if we start getting into the Pure Soft, Cottonelle, 3-ply, double-sided.
We do the Royale Velour, but like when you go somewhere,
fancy Nancy here.
I just rather a bidet.
A bidet?
Bidet.
Yeah.
They're the best.
Like when you look at that one versus like a 1 or 2 ply, You do feel the difference. I know I went away it wasn't even a full week, and I missed my toilet paper. I really did.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, but I'm like, mine is so much nicer.
She never said she missed us, but she missed the toilet paper.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but you're not buying it because of the advertising. You're buying it because it's convenient and you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
I like
interesting.
I'm just creeped out
Because
by
we
those.
don't actually even have, sorry to cut you off there, Kevin, but we don't actually even have TV, so we don't get all the commercials like that you would normally get on TV. We still get them on like Facebook and like
I'm just
internet.
creeped out by the Charmin
But
bears.
you're still, you get them in some form. Anyway, I think it's interesting
change
to
color.
see, how we are, because some of the advertising is really so subtle that we don't realize that when we walk into a store, we see a product and we say, oh, I think I'm going to try that because it's supposed to make my life better. It's supposed to, make me more attractive to other people, and it's supposed to make me richer, and all of these things are very subtle. But you think, okay, I'm going to buy the product and it's going to make me feel so good.
Well, of course, with the advent of social media and how they're gearing up, they're essentially personalizing advertising for what you like.
Yep.
It makes it difficult for some people to resist. There was also something very interesting. Sometimes we like to compare ourselves to our American friends. There are some interesting differences also in advertising standards between our countries. For example, there's in the United States, stores are actually allowed to put something in the air, like scents and perfumes that are geared to make you buy more stuff.
Really?
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that here in Canada. Oh, but on the flip side of it, I remember when I had an American girlfriend, and she used to come up here, and we'd watch TV, and then she would see an ad for Trojan condoms, and she would just be blown out of her mind. And so I'm like, my God, you guys can advertise this stuff up here? I said, yeah, absolutely, right? So, so it really is interesting to see the differences between our two countries, just with simple things like advertising.
Yeah, well, anyway, that was our exploration into subliminal advertising. And it's really interesting. We'll all be a little more alert, I think, this week.
All right,
to
perfect.
What we're influenced by.
Thank you, my dear Nancy.
You betcha.
All right, Kirsten, you got another brilliant moment for us?
Oh, I do.
Oh, brought to you by religion.
So, a couple months ago, artist Ian Anthony Lang created this nifty sculpture of Spider-Man's hands close to the Lincoln Children's Zoo in Nebraska.
Okay, you got to describe the sculpture.
Well, if you've ever seen Spider-Man and how he holds his hands when he's shooting his
You ever seen
web
Spider-Man,
shooters.
Nancy? You ever seen Spider-Man?
What, you mean the movies?
Well, yeah, well, basically, the two big red hands, like the hands are like the size of both hands together, almost
like
the size of a
6 feet.
car.
Right. Okay.
And when he shoots his web, he kind of folds his middle two fingers like that in the palm of his hand, so he kind of shoots like that, right?
Yeah.
And that's what
Flip.
they do. Well, both hands are kind of like this,
Okay.
right? So this is the sculpture, essentially, of Spider-Man's hands.
Oh, okay.
And so it's one of those things that everyone likes to stop and take a picture in front of.
Yeah.
The project was one of dozens of works of art placed around the city as part of the Serving Hands Lincoln program. But this week, a woman wrote a nasty letter to the mayor demanding the sculpture be taken down because it reminds her of not Spider-Man. So just to give a description,
Little horns.
like Kevin was saying, it's the two hands open, painted red and black, and formed into devil horns, she wrote. Calling
It's
the
not
art
Spider-Man, it's the devil horns, right?
anti-Christian, demonic, and completely inappropriate for showcase near a family attraction.
Oh, I'm so glad she brought that to our
Well,
attention.
you know, I almost want to give her the benefit of a doubt because I can see the confusion, right? Spider-Man, he's wearing all red. Although the hands, you know, for anybody who knows Spider-Man, you'll see the webbing lines on the hands, right, to represent the Spider-Man. But if you don't know Spider-Man, they just look like two giant red hands.
Yeah.
Right? And obviously this woman has no idea, you know?
Yeah.
So, and of course, because like I said, the two middle fingers fold in the palm of the hand, it kind of gives you that devil symbol,
The rock on
thing,
kinda,
right?
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she demanded that the city move the 6-foot Spider-Man sculpture because it's ugly, perverse, and a hate crime against the church.
Other than that, she
I
loved
hate
it.
crime, she says.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly she doesn't know who Spider-Man is. And
He's the insect overlord.
That wouldn't be an issue, except for her gut reaction was to perceive the sculpture as anti-Christian. In this case, the woman was told that these weren't devil horns and that the art wouldn't be removed for that reason.
Well, I think I think Spider-Man would be anti-Christian because he's the kind of guy who cares for others.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be the arachnid overlord?
Sure, whatever. It's not the Lord of the Flies, I guess. It's the Lord of the Bugs and Lord of the Arachnids.
I guess she didn't have children.
Guess not.
Yeah, I guess so. Or the kids never mentioned it.
Either that, or she homeschooled them, and they were so clueless. They thought the mother was correct.
The kids are rolling their eyes. Says, "Mom, please stop."
Yeah.
It's Spider-Man. We tell you, can't you see the web? See the web there?
It's all in the web. All right, moving on. Conservative blogger Lori Alexander has a gift for taking ordinary things and twisting them into something shameful. She despises women who don't have sex with their husbands whenever he wants.
Fuck that.
She thinks paid leave is bad for America since it rewards women who work outside the home.
Fuck that.
And she insists all men only want women who are debt-free virgins with no tattoos.
Fuck that.
Cherry top. Her latest take is on eating and how women who eat too much really have no respect for the men in their lives.
Oh.
How would you respond if your husband one day looked at you and said, "You're eating too much. You need to lose weight"?
I'd say, fuck you.
Yeah, we don't tell him to fuck off. But most women, and correctly, most women would be highly offended and angry with their husbands. Some would even tell them that's none of their business and that they shouldn't ask them to do this. Is this the godly wife's response?
The godly
No.
wife response.
A godly wife would tell her husband that she will stop eating so much and begin to lose weight, since she knows that when she obeys her husband, she is obeying God.
Okay, well, what if...
God, I hate religion so much.
yes, I mean, does she realize that what if... what if she, quote-unquote, submits to his body image of her, but it's an unhealthy image? What if this guy really thinks that, super, super skinny is what he wants, but it's like beyond, it's not healthy for her, obviously, to be that skinny.
But if
We're not talking healthy. We're talking total submission.
Yes.
When are you ever going to learn?
Well, yeah. I eat too much.
Yeah, we're just skipping over the marital rape part.
even if it offends her sensibilities, she would keep her emotions under control, respond to her husband's request with respect, and go about eating less and losing weight.
Well, does that mean
Such a
that...
toxic
Yeah, but
environment.
can we reverse this? Can she say, well, you know what, you need to put on
No.
20 pounds of muscle?
She's a woman. She's not allowed to literally say anything
Nope.
ever. Other
That is
than,
all.
yes, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Not even no,
vote,
sir.
And vote
Just
straight
yes, sir.
Republican.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, even if you're punching yourself in the face. Wow.
So if you want to be a godly woman, you have to do everything your husband says and basically be a robot.
Yeah.
Gross.
Now go in
Pretty
the
sure
kitchen
even robots have
and
more.
then he's going to tell you, go in the kitchen and make me a sandwich.
I saw a comic about that. It was two gamers, and he said, "Are you a woman?" She's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Go in the kitchen and make me a sandwich." So she goes to the kitchen, does some weird little mind trick, and turns him into a sandwich. She's like, "Why do guys keep asking me to do this?"
She got superpowers. That's her power.
That was her power.
Turn people into sandwiches. I can't really think of a worse fate than being turned into a sandwich.
Being turned into Donald Trump.
A Donald Trump sandwich. Ugh.
Nah, I think being turned into someone who has to be around Donald Trump with no choice.
Oh, God. Being turned into Melania Trump. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Let's not go there today.
You know what? I hate to say it, but she kind of chose her fate there.
Well, she wasn't expecting her gold digging to turn into that, I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure she wasn't actually expecting him to be president when she married him.
No, but
No.
anyway.
She was like, I just wanted a quiet gold digging life.
I don't have a lot of pity for either one of these characters.
No, I don't either.
All right. So let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll have the sultry, sexy voice of Seth Andrews with us. So stay with us.
Listen to the Sacrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video, interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist / secular / awesome community. I interview people. We curse and usually drink beer because why not? It's the Sacrilege Cast, Zachrilege, and I can spell it after 2 beers, so you can too.
fellow atheist podcast listeners.
We are the Godless Heathens Podcast.
Here's the details with no fine print. You got new episodes available every other Sunday.
Sunday! There's 3 of us, just like the Holy Trinity.
I'm Don.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jerry.
Coming to you from a spare bedroom in exurban Atlanta,
where we'll examine the crossroads of politics and religion, but from the secular perspective.
Sometimes we get heavy, sometimes we get deep.
And no one is above reproach or mockery, especially each other.
It's more of what you want and less of what you don't.
So open your hearts and minds to the Godless Heathens in your podcast rotation.
And you just might learn something too.
By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the fuck up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it?
I don't know where the lights are taking us. Something in the night is dangerous. And nothing's holding back the 2 of us.
All right, well, our next guest needs really no introduction. You know, usually ask them to give a little bio by themselves, but you know what? If you don't know who Seth Andrews is, you've been living on Mars, in a cave, with your hands in your ears or something like that, you know. And
Whatever.
He is the host of the Thinking Atheist and an author and an all-around coffee connoisseur. He's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dresser. Seth Andrews, thank you so much for coming back to Lift of the Valley.
Thanks for the invite. Good to talk to everybody again. You guys are like family, so it's good to hang out. So.
Good to know.
But, you know, this will be the favorite family, too, hopefully.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Seth, like I said, you know, normally I ask people to give a bio by themselves, but everybody knows you. You're, like, favorite of everybody. Everybody just loves Seth. So we're just going to dive right into it. Lately, there's been a lot of talk on both sides of our respective countries about freedom of speech. And I thought, you know, who better than a man who grew up as a broadcaster, you know, a Christian broadcaster, and actually went through a pretty amazing apostasy, and now does a living being still a broadcaster, but for podcasts. I thought, you know, who else but Seth could actually talk about free speech? So I said, you know, maybe I'll ask you your thoughts about that. So maybe you want to give us your quick thoughts on how do you feel about free speech? Are you like an absolutist about free speech? How do you value?
Well, you know, I don't know if I'm an absolutist. I just... You know, and you said, well, everybody loves Seth, and the truth is that there are some people who just think I'm the devil, and it's because I don't think that we censor even really the worst speech out there. You know, if white supremacists are out and they are spewing their horrible, you know, toxicity, I think I stand against it with every fiber of my being. But they have a right to have and express that hatred or that opinion, not to incite violence. But, you know, it's like the perfect is the enemy of the good, right? I mean, and so we don't have a perfect solution when it comes to this type of thing. Because once you start censoring what people can and cannot say, you enter an arena where there is a subjective third party who is going to determine for you what you can hear. And I don't want someone else taking that responsibility from me. Christopher Hitchens once gave a speech, and he was talking about speech. And he's like, you know, who would you charge to be the person who will decide for you what speech is or is not acceptable, what ideas you cannot or cannot be presented with? And I think, you know, our freedom of speech laws in the United States, they don't exist to protect the speech we like. It's there to protect the speech that we don't like, because both have to exist in the arena of ideas. And it's, again, an imperfect solution, but I would rather err on the side of speech. I don't think that we start going we start declaring you can't say that, you can't express that, you can't be that. I think you can, and then I have every right under the free speech model that we live in to say that's abhorrent, I disagree, I think it's morally bankrupt, I stand against it, and to rally those on my side who agree to try to overwhelm evil with good, so to speak.
Our countries are different in that aspect because right here in Canada, for example, we have some limits on free speech. It's free speech as well, but you know you're not allowed to incite hate or violence with free speech. A good example that we usually give is when the Westboro Baptist Church tried to come up here a couple of years ago to protest the way they usually do. They were actually stopped at the border and turned around and said, "No, you cannot do this because we know what you guys are up to, and we won't allow you." Do you feel that the American unfeathered way of just letting everything go is because it's not just Canada, right? Europe, for example, got some restrictions as well, right? Like in France, for example, you're not allowed to say anything that could be viewed really anti-Semitic.
Well, we have anti-incitement laws here. I mean, the difficulty is that what is incitement? There are some very clear demonstrations of someone inciting another to violence. And, get your gun, go out and harm someone else is an incitement to violence. And that speech is not a free speech thing. That's actually it's a crime. You are prompting or promoting the harm of another human being. You are breaking the law. One of the free speech discussions that I hear, though, is when someone comes out and they say, I hate this person. The freaking, Klan comes out and they say, we hate non-whites or we think they're subhuman or whatever. And this tremendously toxic and abhorrent speech. And they'll hear that and say, those are incitements to violence. And that's when these waters get really turbulent because there isn't a direct go out and hurt people, but there is the dehumanization of other human beings, and many people believe that dehumanization is part of a model that creates the violence against non-whites by people, organizations like Klan organizations, the white supremacist groups, neo-Nazis, etc. So it's a messy thing. I myself would rather see, and this sounds like a freaking Mentos commercial, but I would just rather see us overwhelm the hate with demonstrations of love and morality and goodness and acceptance and respect for all human beings of all shapes, stripes, colors, backgrounds, creeds, etc. And that way, otherwise I think you're just swatting at the symptoms of hatred. You're swatting at these outward actions that they do. Even if you make them illegal, you still haven't dealt much with the root that drives that type of speech. And I think you have to go and solve it at the root level. And, that's not going to happen overnight. We'll never kill hatred throughout the world as long as ignorance and corruption and political expediency exist. But I don't think that we give up the fight just because it's a difficult mountain to climb.
But would it be reasonable in your view if I came in and proposed something? Let's say, for example, I said, I hate people from Parador, which is a great country, by the way. It doesn't even exist. So I hate people from Parador should be allowed to be said, and we should shoot them. I think is where the line is crossed.
Yeah, you can hold a personal opinion, a terrible, horrible, awful, backward opinion, but the minute you say I think we should go exterminate them, now we're crossing into the lines of action and incitement, and wherever possible, I think we have to try to nip that in the bud. We don't want to see this type of stuff fostered. We certainly don't want to see harm come to other human beings. But can you police ideas? Good luck with that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But you guys are allowed to say that, something like that in the States.
Well, the interesting free speech that's going on now is the back and forth between the 4 congresswomen and Trump, because they're both exercising their right to free speech, which is not particularly fascinating, but they're doing what they need to do. What's fascinating to me is the reaction, because you get a reaction by those who are good and follow what you're saying, Seth, is to be able, to embrace diversity and be able to overcome it with love. You have those people, and then you have the people who are totally silent, realizing that they're allowing Trump to get away with speech that almost comes up to incitement and then stops. But there's no deterrent, there's no backlash, really, by a lot of individuals. So that free speech that's been going on for the past week has been really interesting to me. What do you think about it?
I'm interested in, I didn't know much about Cortez, and I'm a fan. I know that she's. There's no perfect politician, and there may be some of the arguments that she's grandstanding a little bit. Oh, well, maybe, but politicians simply do that. But the fact that she has gone in guns blazing at the front end, that she seems rather fearless, and yet she hasn't lost her empathy and compassion. There's a tremendous amount that I really do like about her as a person and even as a politician. And as far as Trump goes, it's mid-2019. I dread waking up in the morning and checking the headlines. It's like that Picard meme that says damage report. I mean, every day I just log on and go, what fresh horror awaits us today? The one useful thing, though, about Trump in the arena of free speech and being able to see him just be unfettered and unhinged, untethered on Twitter and elsewhere, and to see his followers, many of them evangelicals who have tethered themselves to him under this sort of guise of moral superiority and God and country rhetoric. One useful thing has been, and I heard someone say that Donald Trump is like a black light at a crime scene. He's really exposing the stains, where the awfulness is. It's allowing us to see in full living color where we are weakest at the seams. And I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't know that Donald Trump could be as awful as he is, and his base of evangelicals would still hold a 75% plus approval rating. I thought at some point, even the even for political reasons, political expediency, the Franklin Grahams and the James Dobsons, and hell, my own parents would see some of this untoward awfulness, and they would walk the other direction and say, okay, we've had enough. Instead, they've doubled down. And this is an instance where allowing these bad ideas to have the white-hot spotlight has had the benefit of exposing it for the awfulness that it is. And I think it gives us, the rest of us, a real chance to sort of counter it with better ideas.
Seth, we already have, as a society, limited some things on free speech. The classic example of you can't yell fire in a crowded place, right? Are we mature enough as a species to really have free speech? You weren't expecting these kind of questions, were you? Sorry for playing devil's advocate here.
What you're asking then, I'm sorry, your question actually is, Seth, how do we fix the world? Okay, well, let me think about that. I struggle with us as a species. I mean, it's an amazing time to be alive, but it's also a time when more than half of people surveyed on these on-the-street surveys couldn't tell you who our own vice president is. I think, I forgot what the number was. It was an alarming percentage of people couldn't name one of our Supreme Court justices. They know more about the Kardashians than they know about what's really happening in the world. And so here we are in this sort of spoon-fed entertainment culture. In many ways, they get all their information from their Twitter feeds, and those Twitter feeds have algorithms in place which sort of reinforce what they already think. And it also distances us from other human beings because we're mashing at a keyboard in some sort of a distance interaction with an avatar instead of sitting eye to eye with another flesh and blood three-dimensional human being. And there's so many gears in this particular machine. I worry about us in terms of cultural maturity. I worry about us in terms of celebrated ignorance. I worry about us in terms of empathy and the fact that we always dehumanize our enemy. And we'll see this especially with the political thing ramping back up for the 2020 U.S. presidential election. You know, all Democrats are this. All Republicans are that. All Trump supporters are that. All Biden supporters are this. Everybody is using these sort of extremely broad blanket statements to brand or label what sometimes are complex situations and people. And if you say that, they just lose their minds and they say that you're a sellout and you're a centrist and, you know, we're at war, damn it, and you need to, you know, choose a side. And I'm thinking, well, I want to choose the side of accuracy and truth. Mm-hmm. Let's figure out what's true. A great example, I'm doing a speech around the country called Not Everybody Who Disagrees with You is Hitler. Hitler released to YouTube in late November. Mm-hmm. I'm about to give the speech in Denver at the Colorado Secular Conference on the 27th. But it talks about that scenario. You guys remember that scenario at the Washington Mall with Nick Sandman, the kid in the MAGA hat from the Catholic school,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
Nate Phillips, who was the Native American. He was banging this drum, and everybody picked up the story and lost their minds over it. And, you know, he had disrespected a Native American veteran. And he's a MAGA racist KKK member, you know, whatever horrible thing they brought out. And, of course, I was looking at him going, you know, when I was freaking 18, I looked a lot like this kid. I was a dyed-in-the-wool, smug, cocky, evangelical activist young man who had been raised in a tiny cocoon, who hadn't really been introduced to the world, who might have been at that anti-abortion march. I was that guy, you know. And so my point is that, first of all, there was a lot more to that story than was ever presented on Twitter, and we get into some of that. And the second thing is that while many people wanted to ruin his life, he had death threats, his school got death threats, people there and his parents and his family and everybody. And I'm not saying he's not guilty of some really awful stuff. I'm not letting him off the hook when I say that I don't want to ruin this guy. I want to reach this guy because he reminds me a lot of who I was when I was this minnow in the world. And rather than go out and just say, well, he can never be reached, let's stomp him under our boot, which is sport in the Twitterverse, ruin people. Mm-hmm. I think I'd like to try to get under that skin and get this kid thinking about all the things in the world that he does not know and all of the wonderful people that he's not yet been introduced to properly and all the ideas that are out there that will enhance his worldview so that maybe when he's my age or much sooner, maybe he can be liberated from bad ideas and we've solved the problem at the root instead of just swatting at the symptoms. Forgive the long answer, but that's sort of my philosophical take on your question.
No, I get it. I had a quick question because something you said earlier just kind of piqued my interest there. How you said that, you know, you wouldn't want a third party to start dictating with the limits of free speech. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is government. Do you feel that maybe sometimes your upbringing as an American forces a certain view upon you of government that might not be shared with the rest of the world? I mean, a lot of Americans are very leery of the government to begin with. A lot of other cultures in other countries don't have that same view. They'll say something like, well, the government is us. We participate in it. Do you feel that sometimes Americans might be a bit too close-minded as to the possibility of us coming together to be able to regulate ourselves?
Well, you know, when I was a conservative Republican, we very much had a small government, get the government out of our business. It was a very libertarian, almost kind of a vibe where private sectors, private organizations can do it better. The government is just nothing but bureaucracy and rampant waste. And we were speaking in terms of, even as we were using social programs funded by taxpayer dollars through the entity of the government, we were very cynical about government. And much of that changed when I left the faith and I started to reevaluate all of my positions, both philosophically and politically. And now I've come down on the other side quite a bit and I think you'll see that divide in our country. You'll find that the grand old party, the Republicans, the conservatives, and libertarians and the like are distrustful of the albatross of government, and they have some good reason to be distrustful. I mean, we think about, name a government program that's come in on time and under budget, those types of things. Yeah. Is there a lot of accountability when they are a de facto monopoly and they don't have to compete against other organizations? And how much real waste and corruption is there? The idea that it's government instead of private doesn't insulate it from problems, corruption, waste. And these are legitimate. At the same time, when you sort of step out of that, as I did, and you look at government as a utility and part of how we function as a society to benefit our fellow human beings, then you stop seeing the ideas, at least in its purest form, the ideas of government-run healthcare and those types of things as something to be opposed, but rather you see it as something that we should rely on. I'm a little envious of Canada because despite a few horror stories I hear from time to time, apparently your healthcare system is quite effective. And this is emulated in nations all around the world. And I wonder about our resistance. Some of that resistance is this lie that we've told ourselves that private companies are going to do it with greater integrity than the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. I think you have flawed, wasteful, often corrupt human beings in both entities, but we don't scrub government from the conversation simply because it's the government or because we've been conditioned to be afraid of the word socialism,
Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. And of course, in the current political landscape that you guys are facing in the U.S., I mean, let's face it, for lack of a better term here, we could almost be forgiven for saying there's a rise in fascism in the U.S. Or do you think I'm taking it too far if I say that?
Well, I mean, there are fascists. We see the rise of a great many ugly elements who have been empowered through the last few years of Trump, and they feel that, he's their guy, and this is their moment in the sun. And, I mean, we're seeing the guys with the tiki torches, the neo-Nazis marching in the street. There is I think, an attempt by some to paint a hyperbolic picture where the neo-Nazis are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And we become, the United States is now pre-World War II Nazi Germany, and they're posting all of these memes with Hitler and the giant crowds, and they're like, it's war, we have to do something. Then many of the times that I've seen this, I think they are trying to give themselves an excuse to participate in extremist behavior because mm-hmm. they believe these are extreme times. Mm-hmm. I think that ugliness does exist. I think that there are tremendously bad agents out there who are doing tremendously bad things. I think you don't have to look too far to find them. But I also think there's a tremendous number of people here who do not think in this way, who reject this bigotry and who want to see love and respect and goodness and equality. And they feel this way not just for us here in the United States, but on a more global scale. Mm-hmm. We are the human family. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to dodge. What I'm saying is that, we have significant problems.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it's not, the whole place is not turned into Nazi Germany, which is a narrative I think some are trying to push out there.
No, I would agree with you. But if we're saying, for example, that we should let these less than desirable element of society speak freely, are we basically arguing that fascists should be, if we're arguing that fascists should be defeated through debate, are we not suggesting that vulnerable minorities, which of course they attack, should have to endlessly argue for their right to exist? And at no point we should say, you know what, the debate is done on this. We don't need to bring this back.
Well, I don't think we trying to I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I bet people misconstrue what I've said in the past, gleefully so.
We don't want that to happen.
I just don't think that the solution is to say these words are outlawed, because I have kind of what I would call even a bigotry of lowered expectations about a specific group who, I'm not talking about the marginalized groups, but let's just say, what about the most impressionable out there who would be sucked up by these horrible ideas? They would see these charismatic leaders come forward and they would immediately start to gravitate toward them. Well, that's kind of a bigotry of lowered expectations. Essentially, we're saying, well, let me do the thinking for you. Let me decide for you what it is that you should be introduced to, because you're too weak-minded to be able to do that. So I reject that. And two, I think, as far as the marginalized groups, we have long been fighting for their right to vote, to not be treated with bigotry and discrimination in our private homes, in our organizations, our corporations, our governments, our culture. And I think these are discussions that are going to have to continue. Anytime we see a marginalized group, I think we have to operate not that, let's make it illegal so no one's talking about it. Because even if you make it illegal on the surface, people are still talking about it behind closed doors. I think we have to change the culture overall. And that means we have to defeat evil with good. And by evil, I don't mean an evil spirit, but evil deeds, evil thoughts, evil intent. And we simply overwhelm the bad ideas and go out and I'm reminded of there's an activist. She's actually a Muslim, but I've fallen in love with her work. Her name is Dia Khan, and she has a Netflix documentary called White Right, Facing the Enemy, right? If you go out to a neo-Nazi rally, they're ready for you to stand across the street from them and scream and shout and have your placards and point fingers and spit and carry on, maybe even start a fist fight. They're ready for that. And everybody doubles down. Everybody loses their mind. There's headlines, which is maybe part of what they want out there. Dia Khan rejected that. What she did was she took a video camera and she went into the living rooms of several white supremacists, neo-Nazis, face to face, sitting 4 feet across from them, and she rolled a tape, so to speak. And she spoke to them directly, but with empathy and compassion. Take a look at me, she would say. Do you think that I'm less than a human being? Do you think that I don't deserve to live? Do you think that I should be deported and left and cut out of all the things this country has to offer? I'm paraphrasing. And where these neo-Nazis who'd been wearing their swastika tattoos and had been frothing and screaming and out there in the big groups in the parades, they were completely disarmed when they were treated in this way by Dia Khan. They had one guy couldn't finish the interview. He said, please stop. He just totally overloaded. And what we had seen was they had been presented not with the other, the out group, their enemy, the subhuman, but they had been face to face presented with an actual flesh and blood human being who was talking to them. I'm not saying this is always the case. I'm just saying this is a case study in what's possible. And after the interviews took place and it's an hour-long documentary on Netflix released, she got a letter from one of the interviewees, and he said, after we spoke, I did some thinking and I realized I could no longer be a white supremacist, and he walked away from hate. Wow. And there are many instances. There's another film about a guy called Erasing Hate. He had facial tattoos with racial messages. He walked away from hate. There are other people who've started anti-hate groups after they walked away from hate. This is where I want to focus my time and energy. I'm not saying we can always sit down face to face with the people who are awful or doing awful things or saying awful things, but I am saying that many of these people are victims of bad ideas, brainwashed people. And if we can cut through some of that, instead of swatting at the symptoms, we could actually change minds. And then they become the most powerful forces for good on our side, on the side of dignity, respect, humanism, and And it's rare, but it does happen. I think it should happen more often, but we have to sort of fertilize those grounds, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a lot easier to thrill people with hatred than it is with reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate.
And it feels good in the short term to go out there and, you feel like a crusader. I understand the emotional satisfaction. I understand the pain that marginalized groups feel. I mean, these people have been scarred and wounded, and they have a legitimate outrage about how they've been treated and their loved ones have been treated. And I get that. I mean, it's understandable. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, when everybody's done screaming, what actually changed? And, I want to change the world. I just, let's try to find out whatever way that is. I just don't think throwing bottles and milkshakes and invective and everything else at other people, that's any sort of long-term solution. I really don't think so.
Mm-hmm. So would you punch a Nazi, Seth?
No. No, you know what's funny about punching? I did a show called When to Punch a Nazi as a 2-part series a few years ago. I'm curious how many people who are pro-Nazi punching have actually punched anybody. I think most of them are they're all hat, no cattle, right? They just like to say it, makes them feel good. Go out there and punch those Nazis. There was somebody a few weeks ago who was saying that kind of stuff. And I just said, how many actual Nazis have you punched in your own life? And there was a long pause. And the response was not enough. And I thought, okay, that's 0. Right? You're just blathering. You're just a talker, is what you are. Not that I want them to go out and harm people, but I'm like, a lot of these people, they're just blowhards. Makes them feel good because, man, we're going to go out and get extreme for the cause of good. We're going to fight hate with hate. And good luck with that. I just don't think that's the solution to society's problems.
Do you feel if we were asking this question in 1950, your answer would be different?
Well, I mean, I can't say what my life would look like in the 50s. All I know is that here now, as I've come out of the cocoon in which I was raised and the bad ideas in which I adhered to, I mean, I used to be a bigot against non-heterosexuals. My best friend came out to me as gay. I saw him as a human being, someone who made my life better when he was in it, and I changed my mind. I used to have all kinds of horrible ideas. And if someone had come out to me at some point, had come after me and told me, you're a bigot and, you're this and you're that, you suck, you're scum, all that stuff, how much real reflection would I have done on my own mind, my own thinking? I would have felt attacked. The backfire effect kicks in. I probably would have doubled down. Instead, Corey was a flesh and blood human being and a dear friend. And he was the guy I'd always known and who treated me with compassion and respect. And it was this that reminded me that all of a sudden there's a problem here, but I don't think it's Corey. I think it's me. And I walked out of that bigotry. I walked away from it. And I think that actually spurred that constituted some of the first steps of me walking away from my religion as a whole over the years to come. You start walking away from fundamentalism, the fundamentals of your belief system. And then before you know it, you look around and you realize that you've rejected most of it. Yeah, hey, wait a minute. I don't do this and I don't like that. And this doesn't make sense. And I reject that. And you're on the other side of the looking glass. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how my story played out. Not everybody can be reached, but I think we got to keep trying. We got to keep swinging,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think more people can be reached than you think. It just takes the effort to do that, to realize your vulnerability and go with it and say, okay, I'll let this person in and his ideas or her ideas, because in my mind, they're different than everyone else, and it's a start.
I think it's also a problem that, it's so easy to fall into this cycle of hate.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to pull somebody out of it. Just time-wise, it's by the time you pull one person out, there's 10 more of those, right?
Whenever I'm presented with religious people in my circle, I mean, I could go and be like, that's the stupidest thing. I can't believe you're that dumb to believe religion. And there are people who proceed like that. And instead, I start with the person. and we develop a relationship. My next door neighbor is a worship pastor. He's just the nicest dude in the world. We have a tremendous disagreement on very important issues, but we didn't start by going after each other. We started by finding out what we had to talk about and to not lose our minds. And we've developed a friendship. And his daughter dog sits for Linus when I got to be away for more than 5-6 hours a day. I trust him implicitly. And I think let's get back to remembering that there are human beings on the other side of the avatar, on the other side of the television screen, on the other side of the the protest sign. Maybe a damaged, perhaps really toxic human being, but still a human being. And let's find out what made him tick, how they got where they are, and then begin chipping away at that by remembering not to forget our own humanity in the process. I worry about us. I worry that we're a human species that's losing our humanity these days, and it just hurts the heart to think about.
Yes. And I think that's a fantastic way to finish that.
I think
Thank you so much, Seth, for all this. Take a minute, be shameless, man. Go right ahead. What's coming down for the Thinking Atheist coming down the pipe there?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to be involved. I don't care what everybody else says about you. You're really good people. And I just know.
It's a vicious rumor, Seth. It really is. We're not good
You're
people.
Lovely people.
That's nice.
That's nice. Go ahead.
I was just saying, it's wonderful that we end on that note of humanity when you recognize that we're
humans.
Yeah, that we're not subhuman. I feel so much better.
Yes, these Canadians are humans too. Yeah.
Doing some traveling. I'll be at the Colorado Secular Conference July 27th. I'm going to Lincoln, Nebraska, August 10th. Looks like I'll be in Detroit. I'm going to Grand Rapids in Detroit, Michigan. That's happening in October. September 11th weekend. I've got Orlando on the horizon. Matt Dillahunty and I are going to be in Phoenix coming up mid-November. All those dates are on my personal website. It's sethandrews.net/events. And beyond that, I'm just going to be cranking out the shows and the videos and doing what I do and trying not to screw it up. And in the meantime, thanks for the opportunity to participate. I'm a big believer in remaining connected as a community and as human beings. And I think shows like this, conversations like this are a big part of it. So I'm glad to be here for you guys. And thanks for being there for me. Okay.
Yes, perfect. And also find Seth's books, Deconverted and Sacred Cows, and find bookstores everywhere.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm about to release a second edition of Deconverted. Not that my story has changed, but there's a little bit of the language that I wanted to sort of improve a little bit, seeing it a few years removed. And I'm replacing the foreword. Richard Dawkins is writing a new foreword for me. Oh. And then there's a chapter that hits a bunch of counter-apologetics arguments that, they've really improved a lot. I've improved my perspective a lot in the last 7-8 years. And so I'm going to go back and sharpen those counter-apologetics arguments for people who are just now coming out of the faith, stuff they hear by apologists who are talking about everything from where do your morals come from, or the I is too complex to have evolved, or Hitler was an atheist, those types of things. It's pretty basic, but I've improved my perception on those. So I'm going to go and update those, and I think the re-release will probably hit in paperback and maybe hardcover audiobook form by, let's call it November of this year. So keep your eyes out for that, okay?
Fantastic. Seth, before I let you go, I'm going to have you say, hi, this is Seth Andrews of the Thinking Atheist, and I took a left in the valley.
Hi, this is Seth Andrews, host of the Thinking Atheist, and I took a left at the valley.
And that was the one, the only Seth Andrews.
Some people inspire you. Some people stimulate you. Some you just have to wonder, how you can exist in the same world with them.
Yes.
But it may surprise you, but Seth, to me, is comforting. It's comforting to listen to someone who is comfortable with themselves.
It's the tone of his voice.
Who has an intellect where he doesn't need to shout it out.
That's true.
He just is.
Yeah.
And he's so happy to be able to share it with you in a relaxed way that it just leaves you with all of these good ideas, but in a way that just is calming. And you say, just let it be.
Yeah.
It's almost like the quieter words speak louder than all of the shouts and yells that you could ever possibly do.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a very interesting interview. I really think that we tossed some really hard-hitting questions at him. Yeah. And I think he handled them very, very well. I don't think he actually was expecting that from us. Nor usually that's not really the kind of interview we do either. But I think this is a very important subject. Now, I'll be the first one to admit, I don't exactly see eye to eye with Seth. You know, I was playing a bit devil's advocate there in the interview, but, you know, there are some things that I don't really agree with him, but that's okay. That's part of the discussion.
Well,
you know?
yeah.
And, you know, it doesn't mean that I'm right, doesn't mean that he's right. I think somewhere down there is when we talk about these things, I mean, there's so many questions we need to ask, you know. Do we really need to let people with really, really bad ideas be able to express them? And we didn't even talk about the idea that, you know, what happens when you have, let's say, a hate preacher and his target audience are kids. You know, we haven't even talked about that. You know, then do we need to step in, or do we just let it roll? Right? I mean, these are all incredible questions, and I think that the more that we have these type of conversations with people like Seth and people that are in the forefront of the community, and he's a broadcaster, it really gives us a very good insight as to where we are, or maybe where we should go. You know, the only thing that I think would have added to this interview is if we had some kind of philosophy professor or major with us as well. That would have been an interesting take on that, the broadcaster and the philosopher.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of philosophy that he's developed.
Oh yeah, of course,
yeah. And I think you get the best of both. The broadcaster, the philosopher, the deconverted one. There's just so much that he brings, and he brings them in a conversation that is so mellow. It's just it flows so easy, and you don't have to hesitate to ask him a question because you're going to get a thoughtful response.
Exactly.
And you could just sit there and listen all day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta love Seth for that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies, for joining me today, and thank you to our guest Seth Andrews, and thank you for listening to the show. You can follow us at leftatvalley.com. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter at LATV Podcast. You can follow us. You can send us an email at leftatvalley@outlook.com. You can become a patron like our friend Freethinker215 at Patreon/LATV. Give us a 5-star review where you find us. It helps us and helps others find the show. Okay, perfect. Coming on the pipe. Next week, our old friend Robert Stanley will be with us. We'll be talking about Philosophy 101.
If he survives the heat in Texas.
That's right. And in August, we'll have our old friend Brett Lee from Unapologetics. We'll be talking about prophecies.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and after that, we'll have the political debate between Michael Sparks and Jerry Montanez about Bernie Sanders. That'll be very, very interesting. After that, we'll have the host of Believe It or Not with Trevor Pullman. We'll also have the Secular Soup guys with Amy Withawi. I hope I'm saying this right. And then we'll also have the guys from Godless Revolution with Dan Ellis. Revolution, I love that. And then we get into September. And then after that, we have the evidence-based... Where is it? Evidence-based eating with Del Oneth. We'll have The Vanishing of the Bees with Miriam Heinem, the director of The Vanishing of the Bees. We'll be talking about what's happening with the bees.
That is becoming a hot topic.
A very hot topic.
A buzzing hot topic.
As we said a couple of weeks ago, remember the bees are actually considered the most important species on the planet right now.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about everyone's agnostic with Mary, or Marie, and the Free Thought Project. The Free Thought Prophet. I always mix that up. With James McCaffick.
Oh, you've got a dynamite lineup.
I've got lots of stuff. And then we get into October.
Oh my God, we're in October already?
And then we have a Skeptic's Guide to Conspiracy with Mike Boher. And of course, we also have our Halloween special. That's going to be fun.
It is.
We have a hell of a lineup already for the next couple of months.
But let's enjoy the summer while we can.
I sure hope I get to.
Yeah.
I've been working very hard on all this. Oh, perfect. Anything else we need to add?
If you guys have any ideas for a show, shoot us an email.
Yes, you could always do that. Absolutely.
Or a Facebook message.
Absolutely. Like our friend there. We're going to try to do a show about Mormons soon. Who do we want for that? Brian Keith Dalton, maybe? Well, we'll think about it. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time.
Man of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business he loves.
I'm all yours, man. Just hit me, and I'll try not to sound stupid. Fair enough.
It's usually the other way around. Chances are we're going to sound way more stupid than you here.
We've got stupid covered. Don't worry about it.
So, yeah, thanks for that.
He's done a lot of growth. Now he thinks that, gay people are human. Now he thinks Canadians are humans, too. So,
And they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec. Don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone. Speak your mind. Time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance, and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. Atheist.